Hi guys, welcome back to the YouTube channel. Today is the day we start rebuilding the engine. So we got all the parts, we got everything ready. Everything's ready for it to go into the engine bay there. So yeah, I'm going to be building it today. The first step is to get all the rotors ready to go. I already got them all cleaned, as you probably saw, but installing all the springs and the corner seals. And then we need to take the side seals, since they're too long, they come that way. We have to sand the ends of these down to get the right clearance between the corner seals and the side seals. So we'll be doing that, and then we'll get it all together. So for the rotors, the first step is going to be getting the side seals all trimmed down, since they come longer than they should. So you kind of have to just sand the end of them down to make them have the right tolerance between the corner seals. But the first thing you want to do, so you can check that tolerance, is have the corner seals in. So we'll start off by just getting all the springs in and getting the corner seals in. They're very tiny. And make sure they're, the gap on the spring is lined up with the gap for the apex seal, like that. Oh, this one went vertical through the hole. Let's see, how many times can I fail to put this in? There we go. Close enough. And then you can take your corner seals here, which are individually packaged, which is pretty nice. Love Mazda. Get the corner seal out. These, like I mentioned, are the factory Mazda brand OEM ones. So should just be able to take these and slide them in there. You don't want to line up the apex seal hole at first. You want to put it to the side, because you're going to have to take it out, and you do that by coming up from underneath. But you just put these in to make sure that they line up and everything's good, and they should be kind of springy in there. And then you get the rest of them done. Alright, so we got the corner seals in. You also just want to put these in to make sure they fit good and they don't bind on anything. With the springs, they should be springy. So these are all perfect in there. And this is the brand new side seal. You'll notice you push it up against this end. On this other end right here, it is too long to fit in. You can see that gap there. So that is what we want to get down. We want to shave that down. The spec between the corner seal and the side seal is between 0.05 and 0.15 millimeters. So we got some feeler gauges here. It's pretty thin, but we'll measure that. And to grind that down, we have some sandpaper here. This is, I think, 220 grit, and then this is like 800. So, and I put some oil on that just to keep it lubed up. But you want to go at a 45-degree angle and just keep doing this, and that'll, it'll sand it down. And you'll do this for a while, and then you'll check. And then the 800 grit sandpaper we have, that's just to kind of deburr it, make sure everything's smooth on the end. So we did that for a little bit. And you can kind of tell that barely did anything. So you kind of have to do that a whole ton. But then after a while, you'll be able to put it in and it'll actually fit. And then you check the clearance and you should be good. Then you want to do that with all of them on every side of each rotor. So that's 12 side seals total you have to do that with. You only have to worry about one side of the seal. The other one you can just press up against the other corner seal, if that makes sense.
Riveting. Yeah, it's not gonna focus on that.
Yeah, I wouldn't think so. We need another millimeter. We did maybe 0.01 millimeters. So.
Back to the sanding board.
With a circular thing, because the side seals are.
Say hi to YouTube.
What's up?
Hi YouTube.
So, while we are working on getting this one down, you want to make sure you use the same ones. This one I'm measuring on this side, so it's going to stay on this side. And then my friend here is going to help me out. He's going to do this side. One thing you want to keep in mind, I forgot to mention, one of these sides of the apex seal, or side seal, sorry, already has an angle at it.
I hit it.
And that is so that fits like right against the corner seal there. The other side is, it won't really focus, there we go, it is flat. So that's the side you want to grind down, it's the flat side. Awesome. So we sanded this one down. You can see that is the edge we've been sanding. You want to match the angle of the other side pretty much. It's hard to see on camera.
Not gonna focus.
Yeah, that's okay. But you can see when we put it in here, it lines up. Oops, hard to do. Lines up real nice against the other one. Slides up and down pretty freely. And then we have our feeler gauges here, and this one slides back and forth with pretty minimal effort against the side there. And then this upper limit doesn't fit in, which is pretty much what you want. So now that we have this one done, I'm going to take the spring here. You want the winged ends of it going up to get even pressure against the edges of it. And then you just slide them right in here. Just like that. And then you can put your seal in. Try to get it more centered. The spring, there we go. So then with the seal in, see that's all in there. It's nice and springy, which is what you want. When we go to install everything, we're going to coat all this like in Vaseline, just to hold it together while we install it. But in the meantime, we're going to go ahead and get all the other seals done for that. And then we're going to do the same for the other side. So we got all of these side seals nice and clearanced correctly. You can see they're all pretty springy. So what we're going to do before we flip it over and work on the other side is we're going to work on the oil control rings. There is an inner one here and then an outer one there. Each of them has a spring and then a metal ring with an O-ring inside of it. These are the O-rings here. These are the metal rings. These are the O-rings. These O-rings go inside these guys, which is a two-handed job. So I'm going to get these set up with the correct O-rings, and then I'll show you guys how to put the springs in. Alright, so I got the O-rings in here. There's a bigger O-ring and a smaller O-ring. This is the outer control ring and the inner one. It goes inside this outer one, which is kind of weird. It's kind of difficult to do since it like folds over on itself, but that'll be fine. Should be good in there. And then the small one's easier. It just goes along the outside, so you just stretch that over. And then this is where it gets a little confusing with these. I'm working on the rear rotor here, and the gear, you can see the interface for the gear. That is on the stationary gear, goes on the rear plate. There's a stationary gear on the front plate and one on the rear plate. So these rotors are pretty much facing in opposite directions. You can think of this gear ring being out. I say that because the oil control ring springs, they depends on the direction it's rotating in. So it's divided into front side of the rotor springs and rear side of the rotor springs. The front side has these white marks on it, and the rear side has blue marks on it. you can see it all kind of explained here in the list here. That's the front. It says cream paint. That's white paint. Or blue paint for the rear face of the rotor. You can see the rotating direction differences, and you can see it has a little hook that hooks into the rotor, and you can see the holes for those. Let's see if I can get them to focus. Like right there, there's two on each ring, and each ring's offset by like 90 degrees. But those are where the edges of these springs slide into. So I have the white painted ring springs here for the front face of the rotor, like I was talking about. And what you want to do is you have the painted side up, pointing out, and then you can see in there are these little holes. You can see there's two on each of the outer ring and then two on the inner ring. With that paint up, you take this little tab here with the curved end and you slide that right into that little divot there. It's kind of difficult, but don't worry if you get it wrong, because it'll spin around correctly. But you can see here the rotor is spinning this way, so it's dragging the oil rings back that way, and the pressure on the spring, it kind of locks in place there. Then you do the same thing for the inner one. White paint out, take that end piece there and slide it right into the groove, and then I want to get it set in there. A little difficult, but it's hard to do, huh? We'll edit that. I can decide. But now that that one's in the groove there and the inside ring is all set to go. Alright, once you got the springs in there, these are the control rings. Got the O-rings up in there. On the bottom side, you can see there's these little indents here, one on each side. That's how you can tell that's the bottom, that goes down. These little indents catch on the upper edge of those springs that we put in. It's kind of difficult to get in, but you don't have to worry about it too much, because when it turns, it'll seat itself. But you want to get it close, so you just want to get it right next to there. And then it can be kind of difficult to push in. What the user manual says to do is take one of the old rings. We have an old ring right here. You can see how squished that O-ring is. It's not really sealing much. And you take that on there, and then you use that to kind of distribute the force. They're using the mallet now, but just kind of helps to tap it in with the old O-ring. And you just keep going until it's kind of seated in. Shouldn't take a crazy amount of force, but you just want to make sure it's seated all the way in there. And that should be good. You'll notice it's sitting a little above the edge. That's what you want. This is another sealing surface like these, but instead of sealing, air, it's sealing oil. But you can see while it's in there, you can feel it, but it might be hard to see, but it has some springiness to it. And that is what you want. So it sits a little above all around, and it springs. And then you do the same thing with the outside ring. Get it lined up with that tab right there. Drop it in. Take the old ring, if you have one, and then just use that to help you get it seated. Takes a little bit more easier to find a mallet like this wrench. Is it working too?
No, it's not over here. Yeah, they're using it on the brakes. Little bit job on.
But just go around, tap it there. I don't feel control ring. This is why we're mallet better.
Yep.
So I'm not too worried about it.
Nothing lost, really.
I guess that's why you want to use an old one instead of pressing tool instead of pressing damaged ones. But let's see.
You can stop doing that. Are you doing it? No, please, thank you. My car's out there.
So, maybe easier. Well, just tap it in like that. And that should be. Oh, I broke it again on the other side. Make sure you get the pieces out of there if that happens. But this should be good for that one. See, it springs just the same. should be good. Might have to hammer this side down a little bit, but
Yeah,
it's good like
spring
that.
right there.
And then once you get that done, you do the same thing on the faces of all the other rotors. Of course, on the rear side of the rotors, you use the blue painted springs, but everything else is exactly the same.
Perfect.
So with one side of this rotor done, since we're going to be flipping it over and moving the rotors around and later, installing them, we want to make sure that all these pieces we just put in stay in place. So once we verify all the clearances and everything and that the side seals and corner seals are all good, make sure you keep track of what goes where, right? So make sure you leave each one next to the hole you took it out of. And then same with the side seals here. Put them right on the side that you took them out of, or however you prefer to keep them organized. And then we are going to use Vaseline to make sure everything's all staying together. This stuff will burn off pretty much immediately after the car starts, and it keeps it all lubricated enough just for its first starting. So you can take a big fingerful here and then pack everything up that's going to be touching apart, so we can get the holes here. Don't have to worry about like how much you're putting on. Keep the spring in there though. Don't really worry about using too much, as long as it's not like completely drowning in it, right? But then you can just smear some right along the edge of the outside here, just so when you put the side seals in, they stick to the Vaseline. Get the edges like that. Get the inside of the corner seal holes a bit. And just get it all around pretty much. Get some bigger globs just so it sticks better. Same thing here. And then you can go ahead and just reinstall your parts the same place you took them out of. You can, once you're sure that everything fits, you can line up your corner seals with how they're supposed to go. You want to make sure those are lined up anyways before you put the rotors in, so the apex seals go in good. But just for the sake of showing it here, we'll have them lined up. Same with all the corner seals. Awesome. So all the pieces are in now. Everything's good. You can put just a little bit extra, like on the tops, just to keep them lubricated. And when you start this guy up, it will, or when you flip this thing over, the extra Vaseline will help it just stick more, essentially. So once you have all that done, we are going to flip this over, none of the pieces fall out, and set it down, and then we'll work on the other side. Alright, we finished up getting all of the seals clearanced on both the rotors here, and got all the oil control rings in on both of those guys. See everything sticking out the amount it should from the side there. So, got all these done, got everything put back together, went ahead and cleaned up the garage some just so we have enough room to comfortably build the engine. So now we get to put it all together. Got everything laid out for the engine rebuild right here. All the fluids I'll need, all the parts, all the tools and different sealants and such. Before I get started though, I want to explain one thing that I will have to do just because of the state of my housings. So, if you take this one for example here, that chrome wear is on this lip right here. You can see like there's a little spot there. Like you can see a line here that's not all like flaked off. That's like right there, it's flaked off, but it's all under 2 millimeters, so it is all within spec. But what I'm gonna do, so you know what, this other housing is probably a better example. Yeah, this one has it a little bit more. You can see it's not too much. It's all within spec, but it is there. And it looks like this just came from the Apex seals, the old ones. You know, they have the corner pieces for better sealing. It looks like maybe those dug into the side there and kind of scraped it up a little, because it's only on this side where those corner pieces were. The other side is for the most part completely fine. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take these Apex seals and I'm going to put them with that corner piece on the other side. And if you've seen people rebuild these engines before, what they usually do is this plate's, you know, the bottom, then they put this on there, then they put the rotor in, then they put the long side of the Apex seal, and then they put the corner on top, which is where it would be riding here. But I want that on the bottom, which makes it difficult to build. So what we have to do is take the corner pieces and super glue them to the long pieces so that we can insert them that way with that piece on the bottom. That's also usually what people do when they're bridge porting, because you know they cut a much larger hole here, so they want that corner seal on the other side so it doesn't get kind of messed up and fall in that hole there. So when people do Bridgeport builds, you'll see them do the super glue stuff too. I just got some regular super glue. This stuff will burn off when the engine starts, so just any regular super glue should work. And what people usually do is they make it a little longer. So you can see this is like the regular length of the whole thing. But what they'll do is they'll take this and glue it, probably not that far down, but a little farther. So the seal's a little longer, and then when the entire thing is clamped together, the entire engine, it pushes that piece back down, and essentially it just goes from glued right there to pushing it down, and that just snaps the glue, just to make sure that glue's not in there. But again, it should burn, but I'll probably give it like maybe that much, you know. And I'll just glue all 6 of these guys. And here are those guys there. I cleaned them up with a little brake cleaner first, just to make sure the mating surfaces that I'm gluing are nice and clean. This glue sets in like 10 seconds, so these are already pretty good to go. But I'll let these sit, you know, for a while, and then before I install anything, I want to make sure there's no excess glue on the outsides, so I'll clean those up a bit. And then I don't know if I mentioned it, but I also cleaned all these tension bolts. That's another thing you want nice and clean. You know, they all had grime and stuff on them just from, you know, leaking oil and such. But I soaked the ends of these all in PB Blaster and hit them with a wire brush. So now there's not really any debris in any of them, so that'll be nice. And I did the same on the front housing. I cleaned out all the holes that these guys screw into. So right now, we're just mounting the front plate up to our engine stand guy here. And this will let us, you know, actually let us stack up the housings. And, you know, we'll be able to spin this around, and this is what you want to build it on. Alright, so, should just be able to take the main rear stationary, or front stationary gear here. Can only really go in one way. Just get it lined up. Should drop right in like that. Should just slide in easy. If you have to hit it like we were doing earlier, then that's probably not good. And then we're just going to hold this temporarily. We're just going to put 2 bolts in. We're going to take these bolts out once we get everything together, because we're going to flip this entire thing over once everything's together. And then there's some bits that go in here, and there's a cover plate here and some bearings, but that'll be for the very end. Alright, so once we have our stationary gear in, the next step, we're going to flip this guy over, and it will stay flipped over for the majority of the time. And we are going to install the coolant seals. And the coolant seals go in these grooves around the very edge here. There's 2 of them there, and there's a bigger and a smaller one. The smaller one is right next to the combustion chamber, so it's a lot beefier. And one important thing to note about these is the inside one, there's a part there where it's conjoined. There's a seam, you can see, and it has these markings next to it. And that actually goes a specific way. You want to put these on the coldest part of the engine, since that's the weakest part. And that is right up here, just about right above the intake ports. So you want to put it there. And you want to make sure when you're installing them you have the white paint, the white edges facing outside. So, like that. And what you want to do, it helps it stay in there while you're installing it, but it also improves sealing, as you can use some Hylomar. This is a gasket type of compound, but it stays soft and tacky. It doesn't like harden like many others. And then you just want to kind of put a thin bead along the outside edge of it. I don't think you need a crazy amount here. And then you can, wipe off any excess that you don't want. Like the excess that's all right there. And then just do that around both of them. This will improve sealing, and it'll also hold the seals in there. So while you're rebuilding it, they don't fall out. And then if they fall out and you put it all together, then you're going to have a coolant seal leak, and you're just going to have to rebuild the engine again anyways. Which, all fun, I don't really want to do. I'd rather be able to drive the car. So next up, we are going to get this housing ready to install onto there. It just goes on, see, just like this. The, everything lines up with those. But before we put it on there, the first thing we want to do is, there are 4 dowels total that go into the engine. Got all 4 of those guys right here. They keep it all straight when you're installing everything, but also 2 of them are oil passages. The dowels that go up here through the top. The other housing is the same. The dowel goes through here, and that's actually an oil passage. So there's O-rings that you put. There's one of these on each side. And kind of just the same thing as the coolant seals. We're going to put a little bit of this Hylomar stuff on there just to hold it in place while we do the install, since we'll be flipping it upside down and all that. The Hylomar stuff's also very sticky, and it doesn't really come off that easy. So, get gloved up. Shouldn't take too much. Just a little bit on there to hold it in, and then there's one on the other side. So once you have these O-rings in place on here with the Hylomar stuff, I put way too much of this. This is just RTV gray. You want to put some of this sealant down here on the legs. Underneath all this is the oil pan and all that. So you kind of just want to make sure that this is all sealed up, just to help prevent any oil leaks. It's going to leak oil because it is a rotary engine, but might as well at least try to make it not, right? But you can see, show it in the manual there, on the bottom of the right page there, it has all the locations, kind of just a diagram of where to put the sealant stuff. So that's kind of what you want to follow for that. And then, once you have all that set up, now you can actually put this guy on there. Make sure your O-rings and everything are still in place. And I did the sealant on the side that's going down here first. And then for this one, it's pretty easy. You just get it lined up and you just set it on there. There is dowels that go through that we'll be putting down. Those dowels I was mentioning just a second ago. And one goes right through there and one goes right through there. So we can grab these dowels here. So before we put these in, I've seen a lot of people just coat them in a little bit of oil. They are, well, this one at least is an oil passage, but it also just helps everything kind of go in smoothly. So I will just have to use my hands here. It's not really an ideal way to do it. It's not fun. Just kind of lube it up, you know. Lube up the little shaft. It's not funny. And then should go right through, and should sit a little lower than that, so you might have to kind of, there we go, just kind of shift the housing a little bit so that it's all lined up. Get this one all greased up too. And should just go in pretty easy. Not too much resistance here. Yep, should go in just like that. And with the new housing on, you of course want to make sure everything is all cleaned off, no dust in there. I've wiped these things down about 100 times now, but you know, just give it a good once over. Make sure there's no debris or anything in there. And then for these, I used engine oil. For everything that's going to be, you know, coated in engine oil, I'll use actual engine oil just to pre-lube it for assembly for its first time running. But for everything inside the housings, I'm just going to use 2-stroke engine oil since that's what's, you know, I pre-mix my car. I have a video coming out on that soon. But, you know, this burns better, so I'm going to put that in the actual housing itself. And I don't really have a high-tech way of doing this, so it's just going to be by hand. But we're just going to, ooh, it's a lot. It's going to take that stuff and just coat the whole inside here, because we do not want it to be dry when we're cranking everything over for the first time, because that is a good way to make a lot of heat and make a lot of parts break. So get that all lubed up, everything thoroughly coated in the inside, and then I'll just wipe off some of the excess just from like where the coolant seals go, just so we don't have any kind of complications there. Get some off of the fuse here, but that should be pretty good. Not so much food. Okay, so for the rotors, I kept track of which ones were in the front and in the rear, which is something you definitely want to do, just to, you know, make sure you get all your oil control rings, like I was talking about earlier, facing the right directions. This one is the rear, so I'm not doing that one because we're doing the front of the engine. This one I put an F right there, F for front. So everything on both sides of this rotor are all covered in Vaseline. Everything's finished with these from before. So before you put the rotor in, you want to make sure that the corner seals are lined up so that the apex seals can be inserted. And what you want to do is you want to just take your apex seal and line it up right there. You can see that that corner seal could be twisted so that the apex seal doesn't go all the way in. And then just on both sides, you want to turn it so it lines up and then insert the apex seal. And that should just, make sure you don't pop one of them out, right? But just make sure they're all lined up, and you want to do that for all 3 sides. All right. And then you just want to insert it gear side down, that gear on the rotor meshes with this gear right there on the inside. And it's a little stressful, but you should just be able to gently lower that into there, making sure not to, mess anything up really. I'll probably sit a little higher than the edge here just because there's springs on the bottom pushing it up. But that is the rotor inside there. And then next up is the apex seals and the apex seal springs. Like I was showing earlier, I got these all glued together, and then we have these springs for those. Take my gloves off real quick to make it easier, but then we'll go ahead and insert those gloves. So now that the rotor is inside the housing there, it's time to get this big old shaft here down up in there. You know what I'm saying? Should be clean. Just wipe it off, make sure there's no grime or anything. Same thing with the rotor bearings here. The bottom one should be clean as well. And then I'm just going to take some engine oil here, get in there with my fingers, and we are going to take this guy and just grease up what's going to be touching things in here. So this one goes to that front bearing, front stationary gear bearing that we put in the first step, this piece here. And then this bigger lobe here is what the rotor rides on. You can see they're offset because the rotors are offset, so it's kind of hard to get the alignment on these things wrong. It's nice that this oil is nice and thick, so it's not running all over the place. But with that in there, now we have this pretty stressful part. We want to take this end down, and we want to insert it through the front bearing and the rotor bearing. You want to be gentle, don't force anything, and you want to get it as straight as possible so you don't scratch anything. But that should be good there. And now pretty much everything is locked into place. So you can see this is just turning this by hand. The rotor is rotating around the centric shaft here, and it is connected with those gear teeth on the bottom, so everything stays pretty much perfectly aligned. And now with all this secured in place, we can put the apex seals in. So like I was saying earlier, the reason for me gluing them is because I want this corner piece facing down, which is difficult to do if there's two separate pieces, since that's inside there. But for the springs here, you can see this long one goes on the edge here, goes between these two grooves, top and the bottom, and then the inside one goes between the two, and it goes, it's hard to get lined up since they're just real tiny pieces. But that goes right there. Interestingly enough, it's a little shorter than these two grooves, but that's just how they are. I don't know why. So, now we got the apex seals, again going corner piece down because of the chrome flaking. Get the long one between the two grooves on the side there like I was talking about. And then we are just going to take that, line it up right here, and should just be able to push it down in there. Now, it's got started there, and now we want to get the inner spring, and we want to get that and push it up against that bottom ledge there, which may be a little difficult just because it's all very tiny. Let's see here. Yeah, I believe that's in. We can take just a little screwdriver and just push down on it to make sure it's bottomed out there. Yep, should be good. I believe so. Let's pull it up just to make sure a little bit. Yep, that's all lined up right. And then you can push that apex seal all the way down in there. Shouldn't be too much resistance. If you have to force it that last bit, one of your corner seals probably got turned a little bit. And to straighten that out, you will unfortunately probably want to take the rotor out again, just to make sure that's straight. Yeah, should be good.
Nice.
Okay. So with the rotor and the bottom housing and everything there all set and good to go, the next step in the stacking process is going to be the center plate. Of course, we'll get this all cleaned off. You know, the surface itself is a little dirty on the outside, but that shouldn't matter. But then it's going to be the same step as we did for the front housing. Hylomar on these, seals, same spot with that seam there, inside and outside. And then also, same exact thing on the other side. Alright. So we got these seals on here. Got them all Hylomar'd up just like the last ones. And then this plate, flip it over and it goes right in here. The annoying part about doing this, especially since there's only two of us here, is that somebody has to lift up on this shaft to get that plate kind of like at an angle and down. So we're not going to be able to record it, but if you want to just picture it, you know, close your eyes. One of us is going to lower this plate on here, the other's going to pull this up, the other's going to kind of angle it, and then push it down on there. Real quick, one more thing before I put that on. You also want to just use that same oil we used before, and just get the top side of this rotor and just this face as well, just so that's all lubed up and ready to go. And I think what we might do is turn this kind of whole assembly to the side. We'll see if that works. All right.
You are the youngest person ever.
Yeah. All right, so yeah, I did. No, that's fine.
Cameraman,
So I forgot, we had that on, we lifted this thing up, we got it all on, the seals are all good. Then I realized we forgot to put the sealant on the post here. So we'll do that, and we'll do the same thing. Alright, so we got this plate on now with the sealant in there, you can see. Hopefully all our seals are fine, you know. Looks like this whole thing kind of sits up a bit, probably just because of the springs on the rotor and all that. It should be fine though. I guess it'll just be like that until we get it all torqued down. But yeah, so now we're gonna get the Hylomar and the seals already on this side, and then just do the same thing we did for the front plate. Okay, so with the coolant seals and everything all set up on there, we're just going to prep this housing same exact way that we did the last one. I'm going to put the coolant on the side that's going down on there, and then the Hylomar with the O-rings for the dowel. So we got the O-rings on both sides, got the sealant on the down-facing side here. So then it's just nice and easy. Give it a last look over just in case I'm missing anything. Think about it once it's on there. Alright, so we got that on there. Just took a couple minutes. And then I'll do the same thing with the dowels. I will get them. I have two gloves in the so let's take free ball it here. Odor oil. because it just took a little bit of force. Those are those dowels. Okay, so with this guy on here, we're going to do the same step pretty much as last time. We are going to get that sealant on the legs here. Then we are going to take the 2-stroke engine oil, get the whole inside lubed and the bottom surface. Then we're going to take the engine oil, lube up the shaft here, the top part and the bottom part, and then we should be able to drop the rotor. Awesome, so we got everything all greased up. We got the sealant on there, got all the O-rings, all the dowels. So now it's time for the rotor. Pretty much opposite for the last rotor. The last one we put with the gear side facing down onto the front stationary gear. But this one we're going to do gear side facing up because the rear stationary gear is on the rear. Same as the last one, make sure your apex seals and apex seal springs, corner seals and corner seal springs are all in line, so the apex seals will go in. And then you just take this guy and you drop it in. Because of the way the E-shaft is, there's really only one way that it'll fit inside here. So you just want to essentially just rotate it until it fits. Should be that direction there. And just real gently. You don't want to damage the bearings. Slide it in until it's seated in there. Same thing with the apex seals on this side. Same exact process, just get the springs lined up, insert them in, and then push them down. The glue that I used for these, the last ones I was trying to do, snapped like when it was going in. So pay attention to that, because if that happens, you want to take it out and re-glue everything. So one of the corner seals on the rotors was misaligned, so we had to take it back out. And when we took the apex seal out, the glue broke off. So we re-glued that. We're waiting for it to cure for the second or third time now, right? So while we do that, we're going to get the rear iron prepped, ready to go. This is the rear stationary gear. Same as the front, we got a new bearing in there. It has an O-ring that goes around the edge here. The old O-ring, I believe, was leaking profusely. When I took it out, it was just like hardened and like not very sealing-y. So we got that there. And then on the back of this, you have the rear main seal. That's this guy right here. This side goes down, and this back looks like that. And that pretty much just goes on there like that. It can take a bit of effort to get it pushed in, but I think we should just be able to take a rubber mallet. Just kind of tap the edges of it. Just nice and gently, you know. It's late. Alright. We should be able to be quiet now. But that is that rear main seal in. I left some mallet residue on there. But that should be all good to go. Then this guy, same as the front stationary bearing, pretty much. Just goes right in here. Can only go one way because of the notch that's in there. This one is a tighter fit than the other one, if I recall correctly. So that, let's see, that's in there, just needs to be sunk down a bit. I'm not using the mallet because I don't want to wake everybody up again. There we go. So that goes down there like that, and then there's that O-ring on the inside which seals it. And then we have the bolts for that right over here. And the rear stationary gear assembly thing here. It has 6 bolts, each tightened to 17 foot-pounds, which is not too much, so you don't want to overdo it, you know. Set that guy to 17 foot-pounds and get all these in there. All right, so we got the rear stationary gear on here. We got all of the coolant seals halomarred and put in there. All of the oil I put in here was a while ago. I had to go elsewhere, take a quick break, so I'm going to kind of re-oil it. It's still oily, but the rotor's kind of dry, so I'll put some oil on the face of this. I'll put a bunch of oil on this shaft here, put some oil on the face of this and in the bearing there, and then should just be able to take that, put it on there. I already got the sealant and everything on that housing as well. All right, so this is that on there, and that's pretty much the whole engine stacked. Pretty neat. Now it's time to torque it all down so it is all stuck together. And looking at our instructions right here, let's see here, it says that is going to be 23 to 29 foot-pounds. And we want to make sure that we tighten them in this order right here. I have all of the bolts labeled from when I take them out, if you remember that. So I'm going to put them back in just in the same order, and then we'll get them all tightened up. Oh, also almost forgot, that seal kit came with a bunch of these new, I guess you can call them washers for the tension bolts, but they have pretty much an O-ring on each one of them. So put one of these on each of the bolts that you're putting on. Alright, we have all the bolts just set in place here. One thing to note is that this bolt is longer than the rest, and this cavity here is longer. And it says specifically on here that the 17 bolt in the bottom left corner is marked, which this is that one, essentially. So it's very interesting because I'm pretty sure this came out of that hole. So who knows what that's all about. Maybe I mismarked it when I took it out. I'm going to go back and watch the video. But that's interesting. It's kind of, because I don't think it would have tightened all the way down, and I don't think this one would have been really tightened in at all. Who knows? We'll see, I guess. But we're going to get all these torqued down to, what was it? 23 to 29 foot-pounds. All right, so everything is torqued up. Went through and torqued everything down to 25 foot-pounds. Then went through and torqued it back down again, just to double check and make sure. But everything is good to go, looks like. It is all assembled. Everything's put together. You want to make sure it rotates smoothly. If it like binds up anywhere, that's obviously not good. So I just I threaded the main flywheel bolt, or flywheel nut on there. Get this thing on there, and then just pretty easy to move, not too bad, about as difficult as it was before, but you can see, you can hear it. It's kind of it's got some compression in there. Shot that thing out. It's not like a reliable way to test compression because there's no spark plugs, so you know the whole back side of it, you know, the air is just coming out the back. But you can see some of that two-stroke oil's leaking out here, and you can hear the compression, at least somewhat. Just kind of clean that up, making a mess. So yeah, I'd say that's good. Next step is to get the flywheel on, get this nut back off so I can torque the flywheel down to like 390 foot-pounds. Okay, 390 Newton meters. So get it torqued down to that. I think I'll have to do like 250 and then 90 degrees or something. I know there's a spec for that floating out there. First I need to get this off though. So then you get the flywheel on, and then you get the front all situated, and then you should be good to go. You want to pre-oil this seal here, since the flywheel is rotating around this seal, and then you want to get this E-shaft key back in, because there's a key on the flywheel for that. Alright, so I got our flywheel stopper installed right here, bolted down. If you remember, this bolt, receptacle snapped off because I was an idiot, so it's just clamped down here, but this should be pretty good. I believe, yeah, when they try to crank that guy down, should mesh up pretty good. So what they say to do is 250, or needs to be 290 to 360. So I'm going to hit it to 250, and then I'm going to give it like 10-15 degrees. The user manual says to use thread locker and like RTV on the back of it. I've heard conflicting things online. A lot of people say not to use it, a lot of people say they do it. Overall, I don't think it really matters, so I just did a real small amount of both. Should be fine. Alright, so got this guy on, all sealed up like it should be. My torque wrench actually only went to 150. I looked it up. Guy said 150 and then 60 degrees. So I got it to 150. I think I probably got, let's see, it was like about here to down there. So I probably got, I don't know, 40 degrees maybe. But technically I think it should be fine. The bar I was using is 2 feet long. I weigh 210 pounds. I had it on there and I put my entire weight on the end. So that should technically I think, I took one physics class in college so far. Technically should be 430, which doesn't seem right. I mean, the entire stand thing here is like flexing a little. So who's to say how much of that is going straight into that bolt? But I put my entire weight on it and bounced a bit, so I think it should be fine. Alright, and I'm going to call it there for a night. Good progress. I would say technically the engine's all built. Just a few things left to go ahead and do. Mainly all this right here. There is some bearings and plates that go in here, and then a cover here, then more bearings and plates. Then there's a counterweight, a gear, another gear, all that front end stuff that I think I mentioned in a previous video. And then the whole front cover itself, all the gaskets for that, all of the engine accessories. I'm probably going to get most of the stuff on there before I drop it in, just since it'd be easier to do it while it's out. But then the clutch plate, all that fun stuff. Then the transmission on, like I was saying, when I drop it in all as one unit.